Welcome to Oak Ridge Estates, a neighborhood built on power and control. Oak Ridge Estates was one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. Lush green lawns, towering oak trees, million-dollar homes lining the quiet streets. The people who lived here prided themselves on keeping their community clean and respectable. But in reality, that phrase had a much darker meaning. And the woman responsible for keeping it that way? Karen Whitmore. For over 20 years, Karen ruled Oak Ridge Estates with an iron grip. As president of the Homeowners Association, she had absolute control. She decided what color you could paint your house, how tall your grass could be, even what kind of car you could park in your own driveway. And if you crossed her, she made your life hell. She had forced a single mother out of the neighborhood by fabricating complaints about loud parties. An elderly Latino man who had lived there for a decade. She quietly raised HOA fees until he could no longer afford them. Karen didn't need to yell or make a scene to ruin someone. She used the system to crush them silently. And now her newest target was the Henderson family, a happy Black family moving into a rich white neighborhood. Karen couldn't stand it. She didn't say anything outright, of course. But when a neighbor mentioned the new family at an HOA meeting, Karen simply smirked. I just hope they fit our standards. The people in the room, they understood exactly what she meant. From the moment the Hendersons moved in, Karen started making their lives difficult. 2 days after they arrived, they got their first HOA violation notice. The reason? Your lawn is overgrown by ½ an inch. A week later, another violation. Your trash bins were placed too close to the curb. Then another, your car is parked incorrectly. Marcus Henderson knew exactly what this was. This wasn't about rules. This was about making them feel unwelcome. And Karen didn't stop there. She spread rumors about them. At an HOA meeting, she casually mentioned, I heard they have a relative with a criminal record. We just need to make sure our neighborhood stays safe. She called the police. One night, Marcus went for a jog, something he did every evening after work. 5 minutes later, police cars pulled up. We got a report of a suspicious person in the area. Marcus stood there in shock. He was wearing a Nike hoodie, running shorts, and sneakers, just like any other jogger in the neighborhood. But he already knew what was happening. And standing across the street, Karen watched from her porch, sipping a glass of wine. That night, Alicia made a decision. If Karen wanted war, she was going to get one. Late that night, Alicia sat at her desk, laptop open, digging through every HOA record she could find. She had spent years exposing corrupt politicians, dirty cops, and corporate fraudsters. She knew exactly how to take people like Karen down. At that same moment, Karen sat in her living room, swirling her wine, staring out her window toward the Hendersons' house. She knew they wouldn't leave easily, and that excited her. She loved watching people fight back, only to get crushed in the end. And she was about to make sure that's exactly what happened. Karen Whitmore never accepted defeat. She had ruled Oak Ridge Estates for years, bending the rules in her favor, controlling everything and everyone. The Hendersons were just another obstacle in her way. The problem was, they hadn't given up yet. Most people would have broken under the pressure by now. But every time Karen hit them with a bun, they paid it. Every time she spread rumors, they ignored them. Marcus still went jogging. Alicia still smiled. And they refused to act like they didn't belong. Karen hated that. She needed to push harder. And so she did. Karen gets even more vicious. It started with a formal HOA complaint. The charge? Threatening behavior toward neighbors. Karen falsely claimed that Marcus had been acting aggressive and intimidating. She told the HOA board that multiple residents were afraid for their safety because of him. Then things got worse. Police started showing up even more. Some nights, 4 officers in full tactical gear would bang on their door, claiming they received a disturbance call. Zoe cried herself to sleep those nights. Then a fake video surfaced on social media. It showed Marcus getting arrested years ago for theft. It was completely fake. But people at his job saw it. Alicia started getting harassed at work. Someone sent an anonymous tip to her editor, accusing her of accepting bribes to write anti-HOA articles. Their finances draining fast. Tens of thousands spent on legal fees, fines, damage control. Karen watched it all unfold with a sick sense of satisfaction. Marcus and Alicia start to break. Marcus wasn't himself anymore. He barely slept, spent nights researching HOA laws. But every road led to a dead end. One night he sat alone in the dark, a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the table. Alicia walked in and sat beside him. "We can't keep living like this." She said it quietly, but her voice was steady. Marcus stared at his drink. "I know, but I can't let her win." Alicia took his hand. "She won't, but we have to be smarter. The system is built for people like her. We need a different approach." Marcus looked up, searching her face. "What are you thinking?" Alicia's expression was cold, calculated. "I'm going to find a way to destroy her." Unexpected allies step in. Not everyone in Oak Ridge Estates supported Karen, and some, they were ready to fight back. Maggie Thompson, an elderly widow, had lived there for over 30 years. Daniel Wu, a local business owner, had also been a victim of Karen's HOA corruption. And then there was Evan Whitmore, Karen's own son. Evan despised his mother. He had seen firsthand how manipulative and cruel she was, and now he finally had a reason to betray her. One night, Evan met Alicia in secret. "I have something for you." He slid a USB drive across the table. Alicia plugged it into her laptop. Her breath caught in her throat. A recorded phone call. Karen's voice, crystal clear. "I don't care how you do it. Just make sure Marcus gets arrested. If the cops need evidence, create it." Alicia felt her pulse pounding in her ears. She finally had something that could take Karen down. Plot twist. Karen strikes back first. Before Alicia could do anything, Karen made her next move. Police raided the Henderson home in the middle of the night. Marcus was arrested in front of his wife and daughter. The charge? Fraud. The evidence was flawless. Emails, transactions, contracts. All fabricated, but impossible to disprove. Karen stood on her balcony, sipping her wine. "It's over," she whispered to herself. She thought she had won, but she had no idea what was coming. Marcus Henderson was locked in a jail cell. The cold walls around him weren't just physical bars. They were the symbol of a corrupt system working exactly as it was designed. Outside, Alicia Henderson was on the verge of breaking. Karen thought she had won. She was wrong. Alicia was about to fight back. And this time she wasn't just trying to save her husband. She was going to destroy Karen completely. Marcus realizes he's been set up. Marcus sat in the interrogation room. Across the table, two white detectives stared him down. Go ahead, take a look. These are the charges against you. One of them shoved a folder toward him. Marcus flipped it open. Fake evidence. Fake transactions. Fake emails. Everything set up perfectly to make him look guilty. This is bullshit, Marcus muttered. The detective laughed. We have all the proof we need, your bank records, your email history, an anonymous tip that led us right to you. Marcus clenched his fists. He already knew exactly who that anonymous tip had come from. Karen. Alicia starts fighting back. Alicia stayed awake for 3 nights straight. She wasn't just a wife fighting for her husband. She was a journalist. And this was the biggest investigation of her life. The company that sent Marcus the fake $50,000. It didn't even exist 6 months ago. The email that proved Marcus was involved in fraud. The writing style was slightly off, just enough for Alicia to know it had been forged. The account supposedly in Marcus's name, created just 2 weeks before he was arrested. It was all fake. Alicia just needed one real piece of evidence to prove it. And then she got a call. An unexpected ally returns. It was Evan Whitmore, Karen's son. He had been in hiding for days, terrified of what his mother might do to him. But now he had something important. I found something, he whispered over the phone. You need to see this. Alicia met Evan in a parking lot at 2 a.m. He looked tired, paranoid, but determined. He handed her a flash drive. My mom thought she covered her tracks, but she got sloppy. That has everything you need. Alicia plugged the flash drive into her laptop. Her eyes widened as she read the files. A private email between Karen and a police officer discussing setting Marcus up to get him arrested. A bank transfer from an HOA slush fund, $50,000 wired into Marcus's fake account. A phone call recording Karen saying, make sure Marcus goes down. I don't care how. Just make it happen. Alicia's hands were shaking. This was it. The one thing she needed to bring Karen down for good. But before she could do anything with it, Karen made her next move. Plot twist. Karen strikes back. Harder than ever, Karen had been watching Alicia closely. She knew something was up. So before Alicia could release the evidence, Karen launched her final, most brutal attack yet. That morning, Alicia woke up to a nightmare. Police were knocking on her door. She was being charged with hacking into HOA records, identity theft, and tampering with evidence. Karen had fabricated an entirely new crime and framed Alicia for it. Her editor at the newspaper suspended her immediately. Her phone started blowing up with calls from reporters, questioning if she had actually committed fraud. In less than 24 hours, Karen had flipped the situation on its head. Marcus was in jail. Alicia was being publicly accused. And Karen, she was still standing tall, acting like she was the victim. Alicia sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. She had never felt so hopeless before. But then, she took a deep breath, and she smiled. Because Karen had just made a fatal mistake. Alicia Henderson had lost everything. Her husband was in jail for a crime he didn't commit. Her career was in ruins after Karen framed her for hacking HOA records. Her reputation was being destroyed online. Karen thought she had won. She thought she had completely wiped Alicia out. But she had no idea. Alicia had just found Karen's biggest weakness. And now, It was time to hit back. The biggest mistake Karen ever made. Karen had successfully framed Marcus. She had managed to discredit Alicia. She had the police, the HOA, and half the neighborhood on her side. But Karen was sloppy. In her rush to destroy Alicia, she had overlooked something important. The hacking charges against Alicia were based on a digital footprint, an IP address that led straight to her computer. But Evan had access to Karen's laptop. And when he checked her browser history, he found something Karen never meant for anyone to see. Karen had set up the hacking attempt herself using a VPN, but with one fatal flaw. She tested the link from her own computer first. Karen had just signed her own death warrant. Alicia goes on the attack. Alicia wasn't just trying to clear her name anymore. She was going to take Karen down so hard, she'd never recover. She leaked the email evidence. She sent the recording of Karen conspiring to frame Marcus directly to the state attorney. She uploaded Karen's IP address proof to a public forum, exposing her as the real hacker. She tipped off financial regulators about Karen's secret offshore accounts. In less than 24 hours, the entire internet turned against Karen. People who once supported her started deleting their old comments. The HOA scrambled to distance themselves from her. And the police? They were suddenly very interested in reopening Marcus's case. Plot twist. Karen tries to fight back, but it backfires horribly. Karen wasn't going down without a fight. She called a press conference trying to paint herself as the victim. She accused Alicia of launching a smear campaign against her. She claimed she was being unfairly targeted for simply trying to protect her neighborhood. But then, live on national television. Then Karen was served an arrest warrant for fraud, for perjury, for conspiracy. The very system she had manipulated for years was now turning against her. As cameras flashed and reporters shouted, Karen was handcuffed on live TV. Her eyes darted wildly, looking for someone to help her. But her loyal followers had vanished. No one was coming to save her. The final showdown. Karen was formally charged with multiple felonies. The HOA kicked her out and removed her from all official records. The bank foreclosed on her house after her accounts were frozen. Her lawyer quit when she couldn't afford to pay him anymore. Karen Whitmore had officially lost everything. And the best part? The new president of the HOA, Alicia Henderson. Karen wasn't just defeated, she was erased. Karen's last moments in Oak Ridge Estates. The day she was forced to move out, the entire neighborhood came to watch. They whispered, they pointed, they laughed. The same people who once feared her were now mocking her and standing right in front of her old house, watching her with a calm, knowing smile. Alicia Henderson. No words needed. The look in Alicia's eyes said it all. Game over. Karen Whitmore had spent years building her empire of control. She had manipulated, lied, and crushed anyone who stood in her way. But now she was the one being crushed. The system she once controlled now turned against her. With George Lanson's testimony, prosecutors had more than enough evidence to take her down. The judge immediately revoked her bail. Karen was handcuffed and taken straight to jail. Her trial became a public spectacle. Reporters covered it like a scandalous reality show. Neighbors she had once controlled now came forward, exposing years of corruption. She had ruled with fear, but now the fear was gone, and people wanted revenge. Her allies abandoned her. The HOA officially voted to strip Karen of her position. The people who once supported her were now deleting emails, hiding records, trying to save themselves. Even her lawyer quit when she could no longer afford to pay him. Her own son, Evan, refused to visit her. Karen was alone. Karen tries to fight back and makes things worse. A true narcissist never admits defeat. Even in jail, Karen believed she could turn things around. She tried to bribe a judge, only to get caught, adding another charge to her case. She leaked fake stories to the media, claiming Alicia had planted evidence against her. Nobody believed her. She even reached out to her old HOA allies, begging them for help. They all ignored her. The system she had weaponized for years was now her worst enemy. The day of her sentencing, Karen sat in the courtroom, pale and exhausted. Her expensive clothes had been replaced with a dull orange jumpsuit. She was no longer a queen, just another criminal. The judge read out the verdict: guilty on all counts. Her punishment: 10 years in prison, no early parole. The courtroom erupted in cheers. Karen gasped. She had expected house arrest, maybe probation, but prison? It was over. Completely, permanently over. And standing in the front row, watching it all happen, Alicia Henderson. She didn't gloat, she didn't smile, she just watched. Calm, steady. The final reminder that Karen had lost. The bully had finally been beaten. Her final moments in Oak Ridge Estates. 2 months later, Karen's house was officially sold. She had spent decades ruling over that neighborhood. Now she was erased from it completely. The new HOA president, Alicia Henderson. The neighborhood threw a block party to celebrate Karen's downfall. She had spent years controlling these people, and now they were laughing at her. Karen Whitmore was gone for good. Karen Whitmore had lost everything: her power, her reputation, her home, her money. She had spent years abusing the system. Now the system had buried her alive. But the worst part? She still had to live with the consequences. Karen's life after prison. 3 years later, Karen was released on parole. She had no money, no property, and nowhere to go. Her former friends wouldn't return her calls. Even her own son, Evan, refused to speak to her. She had spent decades controlling people. Now, no one cared if she lived or died. She had to take the only job she could find, as a janitor in an office building. Every day she mopped floors and scrubbed toilets, ignored by everyone around her. The woman who once ruled Oak Ridge Estates was now invisible. The final humiliation. One morning, Karen walked into work, mop in hand, and froze. Sitting behind the big executive desk was her new boss, Marcus Henderson. Her heart stopped. Marcus looked up, saw her, and barely reacted. No anger, no satisfaction, just nothing. Like she wasn't even worth acknowledging. And then he simply went back to his work. That moment stung worse than any prison sentence. For the first time ever, Karen was truly powerless. Alicia closes the story for good. 1 year later, Alicia published a book about her battle against HOA corruption. It became a bestseller. She was invited to speak on national news about abuse of power. Laws were changed because of her fight. And Karen, she faded into obscurity. No one feared her anymore. No one cared. She was erased from history, remembered only as a cautionary tale. Justice wasn't just served. It was carved in stone, a final lesson for every Karen out there. One afternoon, Karen walked past a TV in a laundromat. Alicia Henderson's face was on the screen. The headline: Former HOA Tyrant's Downfall Leads to Reform Across the Country. Karen clenched her jaw, her eyes burning. She had spent years trying to destroy Alicia, and now Alicia had become untouchable. That was Karen's true punishment. Not just prison, but watching her enemy rise while she faded into nothing. And as she turned away from the screen, head down, shoulders slumped, she finally understood. She had never been powerful, just a bully who finally got what she deserved.